Hey, and welcome to Fixin FX, a sort of VFX clinic. From time to time, people contact me because their After Effects project isn't behaving like they expect. And while community forums can often help, sometimes it's more of a case of needing to share a project file to spot the issue. This is a new format I'm trying out, and Federico contacted me trying to adapt my tutorial on flying through astrophotography. Federico wants to make a VR version, but it wasn't working out. So let's take a look at his project. He's got this lovely nebula set in 3D space, and he's pre-comped it, so he's added some animation there, and he's got his 16:9 comp with the 3D stars preset going on. But what he's finding is it's just not behaving, and part of the reason for that is the way After Effects likes to work in 3D space. I've found I get much better results starting by creating a brand new 3D environment and then copying and pasting everything in. Let's do that now. So I'm going to Composition, VR, Create VR Environment, New VR Master, and we want a 2-node camera, we want it controlled by a null, we want it centered, and we are going to be using 3D plugins. Keep an eye on those checkboxes, we will need to reuse those later. And let's generate VR. Now, the pre-comp has been set up with some animations going on in it. I'm just going to go down to one camera here, and I can see that there's various different things going on. I've got Federico's separated out the layers, used masks around this, which is exactly the technique I talk about, and it can be really effective. But rather than pre-comp them, I'm just pasting them all in directly into the main comp. And let's have a look at an individual one. Now, where is it? Oh, it's just off to the side there. Now, the other thing is these all have keyframes on. Again, I talk about that when making that for the standard animation, but for VR, we're going to do it a different way. I'm going to rearrange everything in 3D space, but I'm going to want to be able to parent it, so I'm making a null layer for that. And what this means is I can control all the images from here, but I also then have some relative positions, which becomes important in itself. Okay, so there's my 3D VR Master comp with the nebula in place, and obviously I've been soloing it this whole time. And I'm just going to animate the movement through everything. Now this will help determining, sort of separating everything out, because right now all those image layers are on the same plane. But that's just mimicking the original animation. Bringing that center of the nebula closer to the camera, and then scaling it down so that its apparent size is the same, so that we don't really sort of get a size increase until we're passing through it. Okay, now for the next two are the wings of the nebula, in effect off to their own side, and I thought let's just get some 3D-ness in here by rotating them slightly so that we see their edges in the corners of our vision before we see anything else. So it's faking it a little bit, but I think it works. Now, I've got a bit of a problem. As you can see, the shading from the original image is creating these very obvious edges. So we need to spend a little bit of time. Oh, but then when I scale through, there you go. We're now getting that passing through that center rose into the one but not beneath. But let me just try something, because it looks a bit weird having it cut out there. So I've duplicated the layer. I'm going to drag that center rose layer. I'm going to drag it all the way down to the bottom, and I'm rescaling it and resizing it. So that's sort of filling in the original nebula again. And now I'm just going to put a tritone effect on, because we don't want this to take anybody's focus, but we do want it to look like it's part of the nebula still. So moving it back and scaling it up, and then use the tritone effects and the colors to just match the colors from that outer edge. and then feather the edge of the mask so we just blend it in. We really don't want to cut this out or to draw too much attention. It's just filling in that hole. And I'm just renaming my layers now. There we go. So we're getting a sense of depth. And I thought, yeah, let's just cheat a bit and we'll cut out the center from the center. And that allows us to see through the rest of the nebula, so we get a tunnel-like effect. Now I'm just going to try to get rid of those edges, those sort of brownish corners of the nebula, and I just pasted the same levels effect onto the other one. There we go. Now it feels isolated in space. But this is quite good. Have you noticed the stars? The stars are being a bit weird. And I didn't catch this at the time, but when I pasted in that 69 layer and that 69 solid, it's still 69, and of course the comp is square. So we just resize that in the solid settings, and it's off to the side. So just shove it in, and I can't be bothered to do the math, so I'll get After Effects to do that for me. There we go. And I'm getting a little bit of an edge. That might be on because it's on the auto preview. So let's just see what this looks like in VR. So I've got to refresh the comp. I've got to make sure all the checkboxes are still checked. It's worth leaving the panel open, because if you close it and reopen it, all those checkboxes get reset, and when you press refresh VR output, it actually can delete some of the options from the original. So yeah, whenever I'm working in VR, I try to remember to leave the panel open. And I'm just putting in a mask, which I'm going to set now to intersect for the other mask for these wings, just to try to soften that harsh edge that we're getting. Because just using the levels effect hadn't quite worked. Intersect's a really powerful mask that you kind of overlook because it only works in certain circumstances, but when it works, it's exactly right. And what it means is you can have different areas feathered in different ways. And if you're not sure what I've done here, by double clicking on a layer, I can bring up just that layer and its masks in its own effectively comp window, where I can then make adjustments without having to solo it or change the camera or anything like that. And same again. Okay, let's see what that's like. Obviously in 2D or in the VR Master Comp, it doesn't look too bad. It's always going to be quite hard to judge in the VR master output, but we'll see that in a second. But I think that's quite cool already. We are getting a sense of passing through. And having that extra layer in the background just helps a little bit. Maybe rotating it, maybe breaking up that front rosette into more layers would also help. I think probably would. And there's our VR output. Obviously it looks really, really weird. But let's see what happens when we pass through that rosette. So whenever you hit refresh output, it's updating a whole bunch of sub-comps, all looking at different camera angles. And so we get to see the front, the back, the sides, the top and the bottom all in one. Okay, and that's it. Now obviously one of the things that could be improved here is more things going on the sides, whether or not that's arranging some layers in perpendicular to the camera so that we see things going on if somebody chooses to look. But let's face it, the majority of people are going to be looking straight ahead as they pass through this really cool looking nebula.